Hey everybody, welcome to my first speed analysis video. The point of today's video isn't to go too deep into the different ways that I'm going to analyze a piece, but just to show you the method. All right, so let's just jump into it. So first we're going to open the Bach Chorale application. And to select a piece, we go to the select button at the bottom. And the chorale we're going to look at today is chorale number 6 in F major. And the numbering system is from the Riemenschneider edition. So, all right, we're going to select that, and here it is. All right, so next, I'm just going to copy the title. All right, next I'm going to take a screen capture. And I'm going to send this screen capture to sheet music scanner. This is only going to take a second to actually render this, and I'm going to play it, and we'll just listen to the first phrase just to make sure it's working. Okay, this app does an amazing job at scanning images and turning them into music like this. Okay, so we've gotten that much done. Now we need to save this as a music.xml file. All right, I'm going to paste the title in that I copied a moment ago. I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to save it to my downloads folder. All right. Next, I need to open one of my notation programs, and today I'm going to use Dorica. At the bottom left is the open or import file, and there's the file. And here's the piece. I'll play just a couple of bars. Okay, so it works great. Now I've already got one prepared. In the next video or two, I'll talk about the process that we have to go through to prepare these. There's only a couple of steps. So I'm going to select this one. And yeah, that's it. Okay, so this is the same piece. Let me zoom out. And what we're doing to look at it in this view is we go to Gallery View, and we see it like that. Also, we can choose to see voice colors or not. But we are going to use voice colors. And we can look at the full score or just the piano version. It's the same thing. It's just instrument by instrument, but there's only one instrument in this one. If you've taken music theory in high school or college, they may have taught you what's called part writing rules. Well, it's kind of a shame because that's not the way Bach wrote. So Bach would have done something like this. So you see we have these fermatas. So here's one right here, there, and there. And there's one before that right here. Okay? And all these fermatas are cadence points. They're points where the phrase cadences. So he might have taken the soprano note going all the way to this note, and then he wrote the bass line to harmonize to that soprano note. And I'm going to show you how he did that. But first we're going to talk about the fermata cadences. And if you see over here to the left in this comments column, I've got these different comments. And these are the techniques that we're going to go through. All right, so first we're going to look at the cadences that are shown with the fermatas. All right, so we're going to analyze by looking at the very first chord, which is F, F, A, C, an F major chord. And by the way, the key signature is F major. So that is a 1 chord. All right, then we go to the next, or we go to the first fermata, and we have an F, 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 A, C. Sorry, C. Another F chord. we go to the next fermata. Again, an F chord. F, F, A, C. All right, so we have 3 1 chords in a row. All right, we have 2 cadences left, and guess what? We have a C chord, which is a 5 chord. C, C, E, G. And then finally, F, A, C, F, another 1 chord. So what is happening here is really, this is just a big 1-5-1 cadence. And that's what I've written right there. Now in other chorales, we'll see there's going to be more of a chord progression, but what's interesting is these fermata cadences follow chord progressions. In other words, cadence types. And that's something we'll cover in a little bit. But right now we're going to look at arpeggiation. All right, so we know this is in the key of F. We know it starts on an F chord and the first cadence ends on an F. But let's look at the lines individually, okay? So we're going to look at the soprano and check this out. We have an F, an A. I'm going to skip the next note and go to the next note. Another A. I'm going to skip the 4th beat and go to the next beat, a C. So far we have F, A, and C, and in this phrase ends on an A. So all of those notes, except for this G and this B flat, spell out an F chord, an F triad, F-A-C. So the whole sound of the melody is the sound of F major with a lower neighbor tone and a passing tone. The ear hears that. And so what Bach is going to do is he's going to do something very similar in the bass, but with the rules of counterpoint, he's going to write the bass line differently. But let's take a look at it. We have an F, another F, and this descends down to a C, and then an F. So again, we're getting a lot of the F chord. Let's take a look at the alto voice. Again, remember the letters of the F triad, F-A-C. There's a C, there's an F, there's an F, there's an F, and there's an F. A lot of F triad. Now, in 4-part writing, which is what this is, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, otherwise known as SATB, in 4-part writing, at this time period, Bach used mainly triads. There are some 7th chords, but it's mainly triads. So how do you fit 3 notes into 4 voices? Well, what Bach often does is one of his voices, one of the 2 inner voices, becomes a static line. I also call it a sacrificial line. And in this case, it's the tenor. So look what happens. We start off with an A, but look at all the notes after that. C, 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 oops, C, C, C. It's going to be a lot of C's. C. I keep going. C, C, right? And then this is the halfway point, right? Let me zoom out a little bit. And then Bach jumps up to another register. So we'll talk about that later. We're going to stick to really the first phrase. But the tenor is the static line. It's basically the same note repeated over and over again. It does start on an A, but then moves to the C. Then it moves to a D, then leaps to a G, then back to C. Soprano was an example of horizontal arpeggiation. And that's what I'm talking about here. Arpeggiation is a horizontal expression of a triad or a chord of, or harmony. And so in this case, it was F major. All right, now next we're going to look at intervals. So this comes from first species counterpoint. I refer to it as the 8-5-6-3 method, for a lack of a better term. So let me describe that real quick. Bach is going to use almost exclusively 4 intervals between any 2 voices for the entire piece. Now there are exceptions, and we're going to see one actually in this piece, but they're kind of rare. Sometimes we'll see diminished fifths, sometimes we'll see sevenths, but for the majority of the time, it's only those 4 intervals. And the only rule that you really need to follow at first is that octaves and fifths cannot be parallel. Although Bach actually broke that rule, but not too often. Sixths and thirds can be. So what we're going to do is look at the bass against the soprano and see what we see. So here we go with this first chord, F against F. That's an octave. So I've written the first few here. So we have 8, 3, and 3. That's bass to soprano, that B to S. Okay, so 8, and then F to A is a third. E to G is a third. All right, now we're going to see actually, this is an augmented fourth, which is an interval inversion of a diminished fifth. So same thing, but E flat to A. We don't see that very often, but when we do, they resolve a particular way, outwards. Okay, so next we get a D to a B, which is a sixth. C to C, which is an octave. E to C, which is a sixth. C to C, which is an octave. Then F to A, which is a third. So other than this one chord, which was an augmented fourth, we saw 8, 3, 3. I'm going to skip over this one. Then we saw a sixth, an octave, a sixth, octave, a third. And we can do that in any voice, and we're going to see basically those same intervals over and over again. Okay, sometimes in the inner voices we'll see fourths. So let's do that. Let's do the alto and the soprano. C to F, that's a fourth. But F to A is a third. There's a unison. F to A is a third. F to B flat is a fourth, which expands out to E to C, which is a sixth. F to A is a third. Again, you can do this to any voice. Let's look at bass to tenor. F to A. It's a third. Some people will call that a tenth because it's an octave, but it's a third. F to C, 5. E to C, 6. E flat to C, 6. D to D, octave. C to G, a fifth. E to C, a sixth. F to C, a fourth. Okay, now we've done that analysis, we are going to do a harmonic analysis or Roman numeral analysis. But I'm going to show you how easy this is. I'm going to start with this first chord, and it's a 1 chord. So let's see if we can get some text in here. So that's a 1. All right, now this second measure I'm going to skip for a very good reason, and I'll come back to it. What I'm going to do is go straight to the cadence. And this is another 1 chord. Now that 1 got buried in there. Sorry about that. Now this figure right here that takes up 2 beats, right here, all of this is the 5 chord. It's a C chord. You can even see this figure right here. It goes C, D, E, C. Just take out the D, which is a passing tone. You have C and E. And if you look at the alto, it's E, G, and you leave the F out. That's dissonant. So there's a G, there's a C, there's a C. All of that is C. All right, so this is a 5 chord. And it's following our cadence progression perfectly. We've started with a 1. We end up with a 5 going to 1. So what's in the middle? Okay, well, the second chord is another 1 chord. This next chord is a 5 chord in first inversion. This next chord is an F chord, F, A, C, but there's an E flat. So that makes it a dominant chord. F, A, C, E flat is an F dominant. So anytime you see a 5 chord, you have to suspect that it's going to move down a fifth. That's what dominant chords generally do. There's other motions they can do. I'll talk about this a lot, but the two most popular bass motions in music are down a fifth or move by a half step. And move by a half step is what gives you a tritone substitution. Or at least it completes a tritone substitution. And we'll get to that later. Okay, so this becomes a dominant chord. It's a 5, but it's a 5 of what? So down a fifth from F is B flat, which is 4 in F. So it's 5 of 4. Then we do get a 4 chord. Look, B flat, D, F. So this is a 4 chord. And there we go. We've analyzed the first phrase. It's 1, 1, 5, 6, 5 of 4, 4, 5, 1. And as I predicted in my cadence types, which I haven't talked about yet, but I'll open this up and we'll look at it. I'll get deeper into this subject later. I'm trying to make this video very short, quick. I have 4 categories. From left to right, I have what I call the 1 subcategory. The second category is the predominant category. So the 2 and the 4 live there, or any variation of those. So it could be a flat 2 chord, it could be a augmented 6 chord, a sharp 4 chord. And there's all kinds of substitutions in that category, but they always lead to the next category, the dominant chord in any of its substitutions, like a 1-6-4, or a 7 diminished, a flat 7, because all of those lead to the next category, a 1 chord. So if we just look at it as the first category is 1, the next category is predominant, the next category is dominant, and then tonic. Check this out. There's our 1, and our 1 there, so we're still in the first category. Now we get a 5 chord here. This is still part of kind of that first category, because what happens is we're setting up a cadence to this 4 chord right here. So now we've moved on to the second category, the predominant category, which takes us to this 5 chord, which is the next category, which takes us to finally the 1 chord. So the cadence types, I call them cadential hierarchies, but they predict chord progressions on a small level. In other words, what's called the foreground, that's all the notes you see in a piece, to the middle ground, which we saw here when we looked at the fermata cadences, which went 1, 5, 1, all the way to the background, which is usually 1, 5, 1, which is like literally this 1 chord, the first chord, going to this 5 chord here at the end, and then 1. All right, so that's it for now. I just wanted to show you how this works. And this ends up being almost a 20-minute video. But by the time I've explained all these concepts and a couple more, we won't have to talk about them anymore. We'll just do a quick analysis of a whole piece instead of just one phrase. And we'll be able to analyze this whole thing and remember it in under 10 minutes. And then the goal is to just take a melody and reharmonize it with your own harmonization, your own counterpoint, your own writing, moving horizontally, not chord by chord by chord, like they taught you in high school or college maybe. Nope, Bach wrote horizontally from left to right. All right, that's it for this one. Tomorrow we'll probably cover basically the same thing in either another chorale, or maybe we'll look at this one a little bit further. Or maybe I'll talk more about how to set this whole process up so you can follow along and do the exercises as you're watching the video. But whatever it is, we'll progress. And that's it. I'll see you tomorrow.